for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you please lead us in the roll call?
President Kushmerek.
Present.
Councilor Dean.
Present.
Councilor Boschman.
Present.
Councilor Beazall.
Present.
Councilor Clark.
Here.
Councilor Dinatale.
Here.
Councilor Green. Here. Councilor Hay.
Here.
Councilor Joseph.
Here.
Councilor Caddy.
Here.
Councilor Tran.
Here.
I'd like to take a moment of silence. We recently lost a beloved member of the Fitchburg community in Ray C., a longtime Fitchburg radio host. And at this time, I'd ask for a brief moment of silence. Thank you. Public forum. Anyone wishing to speak on a matter on the agenda may do so for not more than 2 minutes. If you are addressing public hearing petitions, we'll have an opportunity to speak at that time. Please approach the center table and identify yourself by name and address for the record and the item on the agenda to which you are speaking. Does anyone wish to speak? Sir, if you could please come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Bill Kolonis, and I reside at 145 Pine Street. My comment or question pertains to order numbers 43, 44, 45-16. Each order refers to an open meeting that was convened on April 3rd, 2016. My question is, are these typos, or is there a reason for post-dating these orders? And the reason I bring it up, it's important that these orders go forward to correct the many serious deficiencies that exist in our school buildings.
Sir, those will likely be referred to the Finance Committee. If they're, I don't have a justification. As we speak, we'll have the opportunity, if it so warrants, to amend that date, if at all necessary. We'll have the opportunity next Tuesday, if and when those are referred.
Okay. Well, I wanted to bring it forward because I think it's important that it doesn't, die on the vine, so to speak.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Lavoie.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. My name is Bob Lavoie. I'm an attorney with offices in Andover, Massachusetts. And the matter I'd like to speak to you about very briefly tonight is dead last on your agenda. It's a tabled matter. It's 13-2016. It's the special permit application that my clients, the LeMays, filed for 148 Myrtle Avenue. And I was out of town 2 weeks ago. They came before you, and the council was gracious enough to grant a continuance at that time until this evening. Based on what's transpired in the last 2 weeks, we would again ask if the council would indulge us all and put this over to its next meeting. And the purpose for continuing it is, although it was believed that in the prior 2 weeks we would have the opportunity of sitting with the NICE committee, things didn't work out that way. There was a meeting scheduled yesterday that unfortunately got canceled. But now, having compared the 7 concepts that the NICE committee spoke about in their letter with what my clients, the LeMays, handed you 2 weeks ago to the counselors, which has 11 points. Basically, what we'd like to do is just, instead of being very brief on the conditions, is be a little more wordy. It would relieve anxiety on our part. It accomplishes the 7 key concepts that are being talked about, none of which cause any difficulty or heartburn. The applying for a special permit with conditions is really the best way forward for the city and for the LeMays for this property. So again, in summary, we would just ask either at an early point in your agenda, if opportunity allows, if you could maybe bring that forward and vote the continuance, or if you'd like us to wait to the end of the meeting, we're happy to do that too. And that's what I had. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any questions for him?
Counselor, we would have to remove this from the table, and then there's a brief communication that's attached to any action we take that I'll need to read. But we can, if we have a second, then we could certainly entertain that now.
Second.
We have a motion and second to remove 1316 from the table. All those in favor? All those opposed? Councilors, I just have a brief communication I have to read before we accept that motion. And this was a email correspondence that took place. It was initiated, I believe that was yesterday. Yesterday from Mr. Peter LeMay and Robert LeMay. I'm going to read this just so there's full transparency, and I'll ask the city clerk to attach these in the minutes so there's full transparency to any conversations that were taking place. Monday, March 14th, 2016 at 12:28 p.m., Mr. Robert LeMay. Dear councilors, as you're aware, at the last city council meeting, we requested a continuance to review the conditions we prepared to special permit petition 1316 related to 148 Myrtle Avenue that we find acceptable. Since that meeting, we have communicated with NICE committee and have not received any concerns back. If any councilors have any concerns that you would like us to address before the meeting, please let us know. Regards. March 14th at 1:42 p.m., Councilor Jeff Bean, Peter Bob, I would like to see a response from Mr. Lanziani in regards to your letter outlining your conditions that are acceptable before pulling off the table. Thanks, Jeff. March 14th, 1:44 p.m., Councilor Amy Green. I will only grant permit if all conditions are met as set forth by the NICE committee and the previous directions from the department heads. Councilor Amy Green. Councilor Dean Tran at March 14th at 1:49 p.m. Please refrain from responding with everyone on the thread and respond to the petitioner directly. Thank you, Councilor Dean Tran. Motion and second to attach those the correspondences. Councilor Dean Natale.
I'm not looking to get a discussion going on this, but it sounds to me like unless the NICE committee relinquishes on some conditions, this is never going to get acted on. I mean, how many more times are we going to hold this? Building commissioner gave us a list of recommendations. For me, that's where it ends. I don't know what the discussions are here. This sounds like negotiating with the NICE committee. I mean, what if there's no agreement in 2 weeks? I mean, how much longer are we going to let this go on? We have building professionals who gave us a series of recommendations that we can adopt and put this to bed, whether the petitioners like it or not. That is what they suggest. I'm just concerned that this is going to keep dragging on. How many more weeks are we going to let this drag on? That's my only concern. I'm not trying to instill myself in the process, but this is the process. We seek input. They give it back to us. In some cases, people may not like it, but that's just the way it is. So, I mean, I don't know if another 2 weeks is going to do it. What if it takes 6 weeks, 10 weeks? We're going to keep tabling this every time we have it? If I was the city, I mean, I'm not trying to be show animosity towards the gentleman who wants to develop the property, but we have been saying for months that we expect certain recommendations, and we've received those. What is the discussion about? That's all. I mean, because for me, I don't really care what the NICE committee says. I care what Mr. Lanciani says with the two documents he's already given us. What more is there to talk about? Thank you.
Councilors, we have a motion and second on the floor to adopt that communication and file it on record with the city clerk. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We also have a motion and second to table the agreement on extension. You just need a
Yes.
okay. So I have a motion and second to.
One problem with
Counsel-
procedure,
Counsel Bean.
when we table a petition or hearing, I didn't know we set dates. I just said it's tabled. It's tabled. Setting a date, I thought if you have a recessed hearing, you'll set a date. So I'm confused about the
That's correct.
process.
It is actually tabled and
It's
will remain
tabled.
on the agenda until it is removed from the table.
Correct, okay.
Thank you for your clarification.
Motion is to continue. So we should clarify.
We have a motion to continue.
I'll clarify motion to table.
Second.
Can I ask for a condition for an agreement to extension of time to avoid a constructive grant?
Point of order.
Councilor Joseph, yes.
Tabled motions by order don't get discussions. They're voted on. There's no discuss. When a motion has been made and seconded to table, there's generally no discussion.
Would you inquire from the attorney
I think we're asking for a,
in order for his request for a continuance? We need to do that.
in order to, Councilor Joseph, in order to accept the motion for continuance to avoid any potential legal conflicts, we'd just be asking for a motion to table with an agreement to extension of time to avoid a constructive grant.
Jesus Christ, that's ridiculous.
Okay.
I'd be willing to amend my original motion table, which was accepted and then seconded. If it needs clarification, I would be
Thank you,
willing.
Councilor Bean. Any objection from the petitioner?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. I have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. The motion has been tabled. Public forum. Sir, I appreciate your patience. Please come forward, state your name for the record. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. Mr. Mayor, how are you? I'm Rich Grote from Sawmill Pond Condominiums. I live out there, 24 Sawmill Pond. What I'm here tonight about is that as the folks at Sawmill Pond have been digesting the new overlay corridor, okay, put in place, and we've got some more communication around that I'm here to raise the question whether a boundary because the new overlay boundary now encompasses Sawmill Pond. It had always been, the Sawmill Pond condominiums, which had always been residential, rural residential. So here to just flag that what's going on is that we're asking for this boundary to be moved. So it doesn't encompass Sawmill Pond. We're perfectly happy out there in our rural residential spot, zoning. Got a beautiful area out there. Want to maintain it, but also work with the city, okay? So basically here to bring that up. I've got, because I see it's in the agenda quite a ways, I brought some markups that secretary here that maybe you want to look at later on when you get to that item.
Thank you, sir.
That basically is what I'm here about, was to raise that and see if we could get that boundary moved a little bit, okay, so that Sawmill Pond condominiums remain as a rural residential.
Thank you, sir.
Jody?
Is there
Thank you
anyone?
very much.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak at the public forum? There are no objections. We will now hear an oral report from the Appointments Committee. Councilor Clark.
Thank you. The Appointments Committee met earlier this evening, and they made the following appointments. First was a new appointment, Human Rights Commission, Ms. Sanda Helena Amico, 188 Beach Street, Fitchburg, for a term to expire on May 1st, 2019. On the Cultural Council, Ms. Claudia Stevens, 490 Pearl Hill Road, Fitchburg, for a term to expire on September 1st, 2019. There were two reappointments, one for the Human Rights Commission, Mr. Adrian Ford, 66 Day Street, Fitchburg, term to expire May 1st, 2019. And finally, the Fitchburg Redevelopment Authority, Mr. Charles Karen, 75 Prospect Street, for a term to expire on July 1st, 2019. All of these were unanimous ballots.
I have a motion and second to accept the Appointments Committee report. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? It is unanimous. And I'd like to take the opportunity to recognize Ms. Santa Helena Amico, who is here in the audience this evening. Thank you for your future and anticipated service to the city. Report from the Committee on Records at last. Councillor Hay.
Minutes of last meeting are in order.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adopt the report from the Committee on Records. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Communications from His Honor the Mayor. We have 5 communications listed on the agenda. Letter A, Miss Marianne Guichard to the Disability Commission for a term to expire February 1st, 2019.
Appointments.
B, Ms. Ellen DiGeronimo to the Historical Commission for a term to expire February 1st, 2019.
Appointed.
Ms. Judith Perla to the Trustees of the Public Burial Grounds for a term to expire January 1st, 2019.
Appointments.
Attorney Anna R. Phillips to the Zoning Board of Appeals, term to expire August 26, 2016, temporary appointment. Item E, Attorney Anna R. Phillips to the Zoning Board of Appeals, term to expire January 1st, 2021.
Appointed.
Letter 2, letter regarding Sergeant Thomas Legere to serve as the city's representative to the Montechusett Opportunity Council Board of Directors. Communications from department heads. Andre Ravenel, School Superintendent, and Robert Jokola, Superintendent. Do we have? Councilors, you received that summary. I apologize. Where is it? Oh. As listed on the agenda from the school superintendent regarding statements of interest for the Mass School Building Authority.
Second.
I have a motion and second that the communication be sent to the Finance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Special presentation. This evening we have 2 guests here who will be giving a presentation, Professor and Professor Schilling. Mr. Casassa, if you could please introduce our guests, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, councilors. As many of you know, as part of our receipt of federal funds from HUD for both the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Program, among other programs that they have available, we're required to prepare annual action plans, and every 5 years a consolidated action plan that is a very detailed plan about how the city, what the city's greatest needs are in the areas of community development and housing, and how the city intends to invest its resources over the next 5-year period. In the past, a big part of that process, of course, is the citizen participation process. Probably the most important element is hearing from citizens about what they think the greatest needs in the city of Fitchburg are. To undertake a detailed survey of citizen opinions is quite an undertaking, and we have been fortunate over the past couple of iterations of this 5-year plan to have the help of the Fitchburg State University Department of Psychological Science, and in particular, the help of both Tom Schilling and Hildy Schilling, who have overseen the entire process, working with our staff to ensure that we had a scientifically valid type of survey and that we heard from citizens throughout the city about what their feelings were on our community development needs. And I think you'll find the results are quite interesting. Let me introduce, if I may, by giving you a little background. Hilda Schilling obtained her master's in experimental psychology from Southern Methodist University and her doctorate in cognitive psychology from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. She is a professor in the Psychological Science Department at Fitchburg State University, where she teaches courses such as research, design, and analysis, and cognition. Her research publications include articles on reading and on memory. Thomas Schilling, earned a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Fitchburg State University, a Master's in Liberal Arts with a concentration in Psychology from Harvard University, and a PhD in Developmental Psychology from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. He is a professor of psychological science at Fitchburg State University and teaches research design and analysis, experimental psychology, and research and program evaluation. His scholarly research interests and publications are focused on perceptual and cognitive development during infancy. They've both been a wonderful help to us and to the city, and we are grateful to them and for all the assistance we receive from Pittsburgh State University. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Tom to the chair. Thank you. I'm passing out copies of a summary of the survey.
Hello.
Good evening, councilors.
Evening.
Okay. All right. So we administered a survey to gather feedback from the residents of Fitchburg, and there were 9 categories on the survey. The categories were anti-crime programs, public services, infrastructure, public use facilities, youth programs, senior programs, demolition, code enforcement, financial assistance for housing, rehabilitation and reconstruction, and economic development. Okay, under each one of those categories, there were several items for a total of 44 items to be rated by the residents who received the survey. They were asked to rate the funding on a 1 to 4 scale. 1 indicated that there was a very high need for funding, 2, high need for funding, 3, some need for funding, 4, no need for funding, and then there was another option, and the resident could circle if the resident had no opinion about that item. Okay, so each recipient received a letter from Mayor Lisa Wong, along with a survey and a return envelope. 1,023 residents were randomly selected to receive the survey. Some of the surveys came back, in the envelope says undeliverable. 203 were completed for a return rate of 21.4%. Okay, so for each of the items, so of each of the 44 items, we calculated a mean across the item, and so that if for a particular item there were lots of 1s, then that item had a mean score that was very low and considered to be ranked as highest need for funding. Okay, so in rank ordering these from highest need of funding to lowest need for funding, the top 5 in 2015 in need of funding by residents are street improvements, demolition of damaged, dangerous, crime-ridden buildings, enforcement of building and health codes, add more police patrols, and job creation. When we compare this to 2010, when a similar survey was administered, street improvements was number 1 on both lists. Numbers 2 through 5 were the same for both years, 2010 and 2015, but the order varied a little from 2010 to 2015. So if you consider those top 5, if you collapse the percentages for very high and high need for funding, looking at the top 5 for street improvements, about 90% of respondents considered street improvements to be in very high or high need for funding. About 76% of respondents considered demolition of dangerous or crime-ridden buildings to be in very high or high need for funding. About 69% of respondents considered enforcement of building codes and building and health codes for substandard or vacant housing to be high or very high need for funding. About 69% of respondents considered adding more police patrols to be in very high or high need for funding. And about 64% respondents considered job creation to be in very high or high need for funding. Okay. We also looked at the items that were ranked lowest in need for funding by residents. These are bike lanes on roads, search for apartments, parking facilities, tree planting, and legal services for low-income person. Now, all 5 of those had ratings when you collapse very high need and high need together. For all 5, 18 to 20% of respondents considered these to be very high or high need for funding. Okay, so these are the bottom 5 in terms of rankings when we rank them from 1 to 44. All right. Bike lanes on roads being the least need for funding. We looked at the changes from 2010 to 2015 to see if there are any interesting trends. The funding priority for substance abuse programs moved up from a ranking of 41 to a ranking of 15. So if you look in 2010, about 25% of residents ranked funding for substance abuse programs as very high or high. Percent in 2015. Looking at mental health services, that moved up from a ranking of 26 in 2010 to a ranking of 8 in 2015. So in 2010, 37% of respondents considered mental health services to be very high or high need for funding, and then that raised to 59% in 2015. Neighborhood watch programs moved down from a ranking of 8 to a ranking of 20. So in 2010, 50% of residents considered neighborhood watch programs to be in very high or high need for funding, and in 2015, that percentage dropped to 40% of residents considering neighborhood watch to be very high or in high need for funding. Okay. Are there any questions that we could address about the survey? Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious. So, when you're looking at these, is there any information actually looked at and said, so what is the statistics versus what's the perception of people? So, I know when I'm looking at the substance abuse, you know, you open up the newspaper every day, and it's in the newspaper versus, I'm sure we had substance abuse when it was taken before. So, is there? How do you when you look at this? How do you as a city say? So, what is the reality? Obviously, the roads. That's our reality. But how much of this is actually the reality, and how much is maybe a perception?
Well, I can start off answering as a psychologist that there is research on with availability heuristic, and that is the more recently you've heard about an item, the more frequently you've heard about it in the news, for example, the more likely you are to be familiar with it and perhaps rate its frequency. So there is you definitely make a good point about that. Do you want to address the statistics point?
I'd like to reiterate Hildy's point, and that is, I think you're right. I think we're hearing a lot about it right now, and certainly it's been a prominent feature of Governor Baker's administration, the fight on drug, particularly opioid abuse and so forth. It's also a possibility that folks are picking up on this and see that this is a real need. So it's hard from this survey to disentangle that issue. What is this availability heuristic, as Hildy pointed out? In other words, you're hearing it all the time, and it's sort of uppermost in your mind because it's on the news a lot, versus this is what people are really seeing, and they're expressing a real desire to have this need met by the government. We can't disentangle that from these data here, right? That would be, I mean, there are ways to do that, but this survey is just purely descriptive. But it's an interesting question, an important question.
Certainly more aware that there are these issues about substance abuse. So with increased awareness, perhaps there's no way to know if the need is greater, but certainly the awareness could be greater. But they are suggesting that they have put that up in a higher priority this time around as opposed to last time, for whatever reason.
Councillor Hay.
Thank you. Great study and great numbers. I find it very interesting that the top five stayed the top five, and a few flip-flopped. So obviously things that in 2010 concerned the residents of Fitchburg continue to concern them in 2015. I was encouraged and discouraged to see that the number of people who are aware of the substance abuse issues has grown dramatically, and the mental health issues have grown. I think that's positive that people are seeing that and recognizing that, because that may encourage them to encourage their legislators to do more about those issues, which are devastating to families in our community. My question is really for Larry, I guess. The study, you then use this when you are making your recommendations to the city council for the CDBG grants. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's an important part of
Right.
the planning process.
Is the study used in a manner, Larry? I know with the CDBG, you have to break up the money that you get in so many categories. There's human services, and then there's, there are 5 or 6 categories that you break it up into. Does this help you stay within those percentages and help you figure out how to make your recommendations in each one of those groups?
Certainly it does, especially when an activity that's proposed is directly related to one of the highest priorities that are listed in the survey.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, guys.
Councilor Joseph.
Again, I just want to thank you for the information. It is helpful when we go into our CDBG deliberations and things like that. It's just my only concern, again, on the statistics is the demographics of the responders. Okay, I know I responded, I'll admit. I mean, I don't know how I represent or where I fall in this category because I see a lot of my priorities in here, but I just wonder, the people that the CDBG is most targeted for the need, are they the ones that respond?
Yeah, this survey was, the project was designed so that we would target the entire city, but it is actually mapped, the CDBG target area is singled out as well. And so in the fuller report is a breakdown of responses from both within and outside the CDBG target areas. And we actually tease those apart in the full report. So we have, it's actually a little more than half of the sample actually comes from within the targeted CDBG area.
Good. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
I'm sorry, I was going to add to that. In the full report is a detailed breakdown of the demographic characteristics of the folks who return surveys.
Is there a place to go online to see the full report?
We can provide the full report to you electronically. It was a little bit too much to
Right.
put out in full, but you're certainly welcome to that. And if you want, we'll send a copy out to the full council.
Thank you.
Councilor Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, thank you again for this report. It's very helpful, and it's a good thing to do every once in a while to find out what people are thinking and what their priorities are. I was glad to see that in the 2015, where it comes to demo of damaged and dangerous crime-ridden buildings, that has risen in priorities. I also want to just commend the mayor. Just met with him recently, and he's also increased the amount of money for demo of these buildings in his block grant proposal, which I think reflects what the people want, and I think that's great, and hopefully we can continue to do that. But again, I think this information is helpful, helps justify when we want to do these type of projects and to provide additional funds for certain events such as a demo of buildings and that, so helps us along the way. Thank you.
I'd like to thank you both for your research, your efforts, and just commend you for putting this together and for providing this valuable data back to the city. I think any time that we have people being appointed to our boards and commissions or giving back to the city through providing meaningful data for us to help make data-driven decisions, like we will hopefully do tomorrow evening when we take up the CDBG recommendations from the mayor. I think we as a city should commend you, and we owe you a great debt for doing this. So. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Moving forward to the agenda. Council as a whole committee meeting. Report of the meeting held on March 8th, 2016 at 6 p.m. Committee took up one matter, 2816. John M. DeLine, Jr., Deputy Commissioner of Water Supply, to approve increases in the minimum monthly charges, water usage rate, and miscellaneous charges described in Chapter 177, Article 6, Section 177.15 of the City Code. Rate fee increases detailed in petition be granted.
Committee's report be accepted.
I have a motion and second to accept the committee's report. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous.
Motion to approve 2816. We have to approve it as...
We just approved the committee's report, which was to grant 2816. Public Works Committee report. Council Caddy.
Public Works Committee, that's right, we will present first petition 24514.
Council Joel Caddy and various city residents to make Main Street a one-lane street with a bike lane on the left, angled parking on the right from Blossom to Old City Hall, including parking at Monument Park for library only, also raise crosswalks for pedestrian safety. This was approved and sent to the council, recommended to send it to the council as a whole. 21515, James Pappas, manager, Alex Developers LLC, to number 1, accept Turkey Hill Road from Mount Elam Road westerly, approximately 500 feet to Goodfellow Drive as a public way. And 2, accept Goodfellow Drive, a circular road at the terminus of Turkey Hill Road, approximately 1,400 feet in length as a public way. That was approved pending all the paperwork submitted to the Commissioner of Public Works and his approval. 20715, Keith Matson, President, to accept Downey Circle located within Pocket Hill subdivision as a public way. That was held in committee.
Will the committee's report be accepted?
Second.
I have a motion and second to accept the Public Committee report. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Recessed hearing. 9415. The Fitchburg City Council, pursuant to the unanimous affirmative vote on April 22nd, 2015, on petition 3815 filed by Councilor Stephen Hay, does now propose that Chapter 181 zoning of the Code of the City of Fitchburg be amended to create a solar farm component. What's it? Do I need to read that first? Okay. Declare the hearing resumed. Councilors, there's communication you should have received today. I'll just briefly read that. This is from Michael O'Hara, Planning Board. Since Planning Board is meeting at the same time tonight, we will. I'm going to summarize this, actually. The Planning Board is meeting this evening. There's no draft amendment currently pending before the Planning Board. The board will be working in the coming months with MRPC towards helping the city obtain a green communities designation by the state, one component of which is permitting alternative energy facilities. It might be better to start from scratch on this one and maybe have the board submit their own amendment. That said, is there anyone here wishing to speak representing the petition? Are there any questions from councilors?
It would simply be me, and whatever the council chooses to do is, I'm just looking to get this moved forward, and I think that we should get something on the books so that we have something, so when somebody comes in and wants to put a solar farm in, we at least have something that we can hold them to. It's been a long time coming from the planning board, and hopefully we'll get something done.
Councilor Bean.
I'm going to agree. I think it's a long time coming. We need something in place, but I'm glad to hear and hearken by the idea that the city is going to be a green community and moving forward to that. And as part of that process, they have to adopt this type of language and this type of zoning anyways. So I'd recommend that maybe we give this one leave to withdraw and wait for the planning board to come in as they develop the language for the green community. So I'd make a recommendation we give a leave to withdraw.
You have to close the hearing first before you take an action.
If I could be permitted to close the hearing and move through the necessary steps and then entertain the petition. Is anyone here wishing to speak in favor of the petition? Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to the petition? If all have been heard, I declare the hearing closed.
The 9415 be given leave to withdraw.
Second.
I have a motion and second to give leave to withdraw to 9415. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. 9415 is withdrawn. Orders, Finance, 4116.
Move 4116 and 4216 be sent to Finance.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 41 and 4216 to Finance Committee.
Actually, could I amend that to give 9415, 4116 leave to I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong section. Never mind. I didn't go to the next page.
I have a motion to send 41 and 4216. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 41 and 4216 to Finance Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
The communication we did.
Orders, Other, 4316.
4316, 4416, 4516 be sent to finance.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 43 up to and including 4516 to finance. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It's unanimous. Ordinances. 4616, establishing a West Fitchburg Corridor Overlay District as outlined in the enclosed ordinance. First reading, Council, I'll just bring to your attention, not only did we have someone speak at our public during the public comments earlier this evening, there was also a communication which I'll read from Michael O'Hara concerning this ordinance. Councilor Kushmarek, the West Fitchburg Overlay District Amendment is on its first reading. We've had some conversations with a resident of Sawmill Pond condos pertaining to excluding condos from the overlay. Is it possible at this point to make a change? He was then encouraged to work with the Legislative Affairs Committee, if it was so referred, in order to speak about the proposed changes that would come from both the Planning Board and the Planning Office.
To send 4616 to Legislative Affairs.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 4616 to the Legislative Affairs Committee. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is unanimous. Petitions.
Move that 04716 up to and including 5016 to be sent to the respective committees.
Second.
I have a motion and second to send 47 up to and including 5016 to their respective committees. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Table matter closed. Yes. Councilors, at this point, I'd like to recognize our colleague and friend, Councilor Stephen Hay. He's given 18 years of service to the City Council and many more beyond that to the city. Tonight represents his final regular City Council meeting with this body, and with it his time as a City Councilor will soon come to a close, effective March 29th? 31st, excuse me, thank you. The city would like to recognize his service and wish him good luck in Boston. And with that, we have a citation to recognize that time. If you could please step forward into the well. The mayor and I will present you with a citation.
Counselor / Representative Hay, City of Fitchburg, Massachusetts, official citation for you. Be it hereby known to all that the City of Fitchburg, Massachusetts, offers its sincerest congratulations to Counselor Stephen Hay in recognition of your 18 years of dedicated public service as a member of the Fitchburg City Council. Certainly substantial amount of years, and it's great to see that you're continuing that public service motivation and working for the people of the City of Fitchburg. I congratulate you. Entire citizenry extends its very best wishes, and on this memorable occasion express the hope for continued good fortune, and it's given this 15th day of March 2016, and offered by your Mayor, Stephen Aldina Tower.
Here, here.
The shoulder.
Thank you, councilors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could indulge you for just a moment or two. 18 years, long time. First person I'd like to thank is my wife, Cindy. A lot of Tuesday nights without me. A lot of Tuesday nights putting the boys to bed. A lot of Tuesday nights cooking dinners. A lot of Tuesday nights running the kids back and forth to all their activities because I was absent from the house on all those Tuesdays. Her public service is as great as my public service. She just didn't do it in public. I've worked with 6 mayors. I've worked with, my guess is, 35 to 40 different counselors. I've worked with numerous department heads and lots of employees for the City of Fitchburg in 18 years. And I've enjoyed each moment in each relationship. Every one of them had the same thing in mind, doing what they could do to improve the City of Fitchburg. And it makes me feel good that I worked with all of those people, and we worked together in our efforts to improve the quality of life for the residents of Fitchburg. And I would be remiss if there wasn't one more person that I thanked. For 15 of those 18 years, nice try, Paul. For 15 of those 18 years, our city clerk, Anna Farrell, has been sitting in that chair, sat beside me for 8 of them. Mitch Albom from the Detroit Free Press wrote a book years ago called Tuesdays with Maury. It was a big-selling book. Lots of folks read it. Lots of people loved it. And if I were to write one of those, it would have been Tuesdays with Anna. And I'd like to thank her for her efforts. And it'll take a while for me to get used to Tuesdays not coming to City Council. But thanks, all of you.
Counselor, you're welcome to come any Tuesday night that you so choose.
Well, I'll be here in a different capacity. Thank you.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
I have a motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Yeah, I could have, but I didn't.